Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Yes, scrolling banner and Fat Albert here is
it's almost like it could be a bow and arrow, and you're
shoot down the income tax with it.
Income tax. Yeah, this might be new target practice. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, that's what I ought to do. Next time I go to the pistol range, I ought to write IRS on my target and just shoot at that.
Hit the bullseye every time, won't you?
Oh, absolutely. We will do that. And
program everybody.
Again, I said we would like to invite people to share these videos, tell your family and friends about it, because we need as many people as possible about the fair. I saw a rather interesting post on Facebook the other day. It says, why is there not more support for the fair tax? And I was thinking, all right, why not? And the main reasons I could come up with, the biggest one is just simply not enough people know about it. The Washington establishment doesn't want it. Their willing accomplices in the media are suppressing any kind of discussion about it. And people just don't, I don't believe, I'm firmly convinced that the fair tax has not been evaluated and rejected by great masses of people. There's not a groundswell of support out there for it, simply because people don't know about it.
Well, and it was brought back in the beginning of the session of Congress that we're in. There was considerable discussion about it, not to the degree that it was, hey, this is really something good for the country. And I think that's where we are. We, like you said, we have certain amount of information that people don't want out, because noon in the halls of Congress, I think people know about it. It ain't been around forever. It has been around for a long time.
Yeah, well, not enough voters know about it, and a lot of people don't understand that they've got a choice. Do you want to have the IRS or not? Do you want the government taking a big chunk of your paycheck before you get it or not? People don't realize that they have that choice. And a lot of people that have just kind of heard of the fair tax, they get it lumped in with the flat tax, and they've heard about it, but they still don't know much about how it works. So we need to educate as many people as possible as to what it is, how it works. And yes, you do have a choice. If you don't want the government taking a big chunk of your paycheck, then lean on your representative to get the fair tax. It's that simple. That's what we're here for.
And that's why you, as our listeners, the folks that are on the program with us today, our folks that are viewing and listening, you need to join the 1040 Club. It's a club from the fair tax that's $10.40 a month, and it goes to help fund new research. It goes to help fund advocacy through the Americans for Fair Taxation organization, which is the underpinning management organization of the fair tax movement. And we're currently an all-volunteer organization and want to stay that way. So anything that you would put in there as far as 1040, the 1040 Club, or any amount for that matter, goes directly into advocacy for getting people like that to understand, hey, the fair tax is an option. And I think a lot of it, and I say this about every show or every other show that we do, that folks, none of us really have lived in a time where there wasn't an income tax. And I think people are saying, well, I guess this is what we got. This is what we got to do. But that is not the only option. The fair tax would essentially replace the amount of money that the income tax creates and distributes to the Treasury. And that's where we are. Have to, like you said, logging along.
We're working along with it. And of course, we love to demonstrate here on FAIRtax Power Radio just how rotten the current income tax system is by making our weekly visit over to congress.gov and seeing what the Congress critters are trying to do to the current tax code. And so I will try to do this in an expeditious manner so I don't get fussed at for taking up too much time. But there was really kind of a recurring theme when I was going through this today, looking for stuff to put on here. And let's see if we can see if you can figure out what my recurring theme is in Congress.gov. Again, if you go to Congress.gov, you put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes in the search bar at the top of the page, and hit the go button, and be sure you're looking just at legislation in the current 118th Congress. As of the day we're recording this, we get 505 hits on that search. And at the very top of the list is H.R. 3270 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to permanently increase the standard deduction, which sounds like a pretty good idea. And then the next one on the list, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to address the teacher and school leader shortage in early childhood, elementary, and secondary education, and for other purposes. Now, that one gets your attention. How do you amend the Internal Revenue Code to address a teacher shortage? There's no text in there, so I couldn't see what it is. But I know that I have this feller with a gigantic brain sitting right next to me, and he can explain it, can't you?
Yes, well, absolutely. The key phrase in there is for other purposes. So it could be a section of it is nothing but a smokescreen to build an underpinning under the actual need, which is for other purposes, which means that you could go back to that bill 6 months from now and say, I found something that would fit into the for other purposes component of but I don't know if it has to be in the same category of education. Would you think that it might have to be in the same education?
I don't know. Just FYI, I'm not sure you can do anything about it, but you're getting audio dropouts every now and then. So hopefully we can fix that.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Oh yes, I can hear you good when you're talking. Just it drops out for a second or two every so often. So we apologize if that's causing anybody any issues, but that's it. But there we go. That's to amend the Internal Revenue Code. So the Internal Revenue Code is not about collecting money for the government. It's about addressing teacher and school leader shortages in early childhood, elementary, secondary education, and for other purposes. Now, if we've got a pilot shortage like the airlines say they have, if we've got a shortage of truck drivers to deliver stuff we need, they're not working on that. They're just working with teachers and school leader shortage. And isn't it cool the way that people mess with the tax code for all different kinds of stuff?
It really is. It really is just it doesn't. I don't get. I think I was trying to think of the word it's of no consequence to you and me, for example. If it ends up being a law of the land and it came in through the tax code and it shows up, wouldn't that have to that would have to be like in a bill somewhere, a bill that would then allow Congress to debate and vote and the Senate to debate and vote and then the president to sign. Like I said a minute ago, I think this is all about and for other purposes. In what they're looking at for the education part of it. But I don't see where the tax code, as you have always said, I don't see where the tax code has a lot to do with anything that is brought before Congress through the tax code, modifying the tax code.
All right. Well, let's get on through this, and hopefully we can get through here. This is H.R. 3264 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a refundable tax credit for certain teachers as a supplement to state efforts to provide teachers with a livable wage and for other purposes. That's H.R. 3264. There's a companion bill, S 1584, that does the same thing. So there we go. You're picking people to give tax breaks to. And again, we're making refundable tax credit. That's a euphemism for we're just going to hand you money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I've never been in a situation where somebody just handed me money.
Yes. Well,
some money. It just
do that.
Does not work out.
Okay, here's the other one, H.R. 3253 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to increase the differential wage payment credit. So we're getting a pattern here, refundable tax credit for teachers, increase the differential wage payment credit. And there's one more, H.R. 3238 I wanted to look at, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to reform the low-income housing credit and for other purposes. Does it sound like that the Congress critters up there are using the tax code and giving out credits to favored groups and which means that people who don't get those credits have to make up the difference.
Well, and I think that's the fallacy of using the tax code to do that. It picks winners and losers, when what we're talking about with the fair tax and a tax on consumption, it basically puts the control of paying taxes back with the citizenry and not having to follow this Byzantine rules and regulations that is our federal tax code, to do business or to live your life, and it's a challenge. And then I think that's where one of the biggest challenges is for going across and getting to the other side of this whole tax code issue and making legislation, creating legislation there, is to move beyond that. So we can actually talk about, hey, the fair tax will make it easier for you to live your life without having the income tax hanging around your neck all the time.
Okay, well, let me make sure that people understand that when we are pointing out these tax credits and tax breaks for teachers or firefighters or military personnel, first responders, stuff like that, we are in no way disparaging their worthiness to get to get a break. But the thing is, if they get a break and nobody else does, then it's just not a good idea to have the tax code picking winners and losers. And if you're one of those things, you're good. If you drive a truck or if you sit at a radio station and play music to people or program computers, nope, you don't get a break. So let's just treat everybody the same way. Repeal the entire income tax code and just let everybody pay their taxes when they buy things at the cash register. That works a lot better, don't you think?
Absolutely, it sure does, and that's the exciting thing about the fair tax, and it's moving through Congress now in the House Ways and Means Committee. We hope that it's going to be, and we're planning on it being brought to the full floor, being voted out of House Ways and Means and onto the floor of the House later this year, and voted on as an option and debated. And I think that's the key thing that we're hoping and planning on having happen now.
I don't know if you did that on purpose, but that is a perfect setup to where we are going with this episode of Fair Tax Power Radio. You hear people all the time saying, well, gee, it's a great idea. What can I do to help? And as you mentioned, the way that a bill works its way through Congress, it's introduced by a member, it picks up co-sponsors, it's assigned to a committee, it has to be voted out of that committee before it can come to the floor of the House for debate and a vote. And so in order for the fair tax to be debated and voted on the floor of the House, it has to get out of the Ways and Means Committee. So I figured what we'll do, let's why don't we just I'm not sure we can call this doxing, but we can just let everybody know who is on the House Ways and Means Committee. And if you would like to help the fair tax along, then maybe you could get a hold of one of these folks, especially if you happen to live in one of their districts. And I know that the email function through congress.gov, a lot of them, they're limited only to constituents, but anybody from anywhere can make a phone call. Anybody from anywhere can send a snail mail letter to some of these folks. And so let's just point out who's on the Ways, and there's a bunch of them. There's 43 members of the House Ways and Means Committee, 25 Republicans, 18 Democrats. And they are ranked in order of their importance, supposed importance here. The chair of the Ways and Means Committee is a gentleman named Jason Smith from Missouri, District 8. He's a Republican. And the ranking member is a Democrat from Massachusetts, District 1, Richard Neal. So if you want to try to make an impact for the fair tax, write a letter, make a phone call to one of those or both of those two gentlemen, and see if we can't persuade them to at least vote the fair tax out of committee. If it doesn't get out of committee, then it's just dead again. And the speaker has said we will bring this up for a vote. So we need to lean on these committee members to make sure that they go ahead and at least vote it out and they can debate on it.
Well, I have to tell you that whose skin is going to be lost at the end of the debate within the House Ways and Means Committee if it doesn't get voted out. It's kind of like, well, sorry, here we did this, and that's what's happened for all practical purposes since 1999. And this is a good opportunity heading into the summer. Folks are going to be off taking vacations. It's a good time. They're going to be back in their districts, talking to people, opportunities for you as our listeners, viewers, as a member of the volunteers of the FAIRtax, of Americans for Fair Taxation. You have an opportunity to meet, even in some cases, face to face with these folks, and wherever they might happen to be. But like Bob said a minute ago, you should get the list when we're going to go through them here on the show today, to make sure that you write a letter to them and say, hey, we appreciate your hard work on Ways and Means. We know that it's a constitutional responsibility of Congress to debate and bring about all of the bills for raising revenue. Have to come through the House of Representatives. And so House Ways and Means is where that happens. It oversees revenue aspects of the Social Security system, and in addition to Medicare and other social service programs and various other revenue related activities of the government. So you mentioned Jason Smith. He's the chair, Republican Party, Missouri District 8, and ranking member Richard Neal, the Democrat from Massachusetts, District 1.
Yeah,
and there
to be sure.
Of subcommittees too, and I'll let you take over there.
I'll do one of them here anyway, because since I'm here in Florida, the only representative on the Ways and Means Committee from the state of Florida is Vern Buchanan, who chairs a there are several subcommittees here. Vern Buchanan is the subcommittee chair on the health subcommittee, not necessarily taxes, but he's the only Republican guy. Now, somebody, if you really want to get him, is a gentleman named Mike Kelly. He's from Pennsylvania, District 16. He is the chair of the House Ways and Means Tax Subcommittee. Definitely, folks, FAIRtax volunteers need to get a hold of him and make sure that he's going to follow through and vote the thing out of committee.
Yeah, call and find out. How does Representative Kelly, stand on the FAIRtax HR 25 as a strategy for starting the conversation? You'll talk to one of the staffers there in the office, more than likely. And so you begin the conversation with, where does Representative Kelly stand on this issue, HR 25? We know that it's in committee right now, and we want to know get a comment as to his position. And then let your neighbors and your friends know the same thing, especially those of you in Pennsylvania that may be in District 16 even. But certainly everybody that's listening and being a part of what we're talking about here can go and make that phone call, and also write a letter. As Bob said a minute ago, you can write a letter to Kelly.
Yeah, your email access, or at least the contact function through congress.gov, a lot of these people have it limited to just constituents. You got to put your zip code in there. Of course, if you can find a actual general email address, you can use that. But I would suggest phone calls and letters. Let me just quickly let's go quickly through the list of the rest of the Ways and Means Committee, because we've got another list we need to go through as well. The other subcommittee chairs: Drew Ferguson of Georgia, Darren LaHood, that's Illinois, David Swikert from Arizona, and Adrian Smith from Nebraska are the committee chairs. You can go through right quickly the committee ranking members, if you would, please, sir.
Subcommittee ranking member Earl Blumnauer from Oregon, District 3. He's a ranking member and on the subcommittee of trade. Danny Davis from Illinois, District 7, subcommittee ranking member, works on, he's the subcommittee on work and welfare. Lloyd Doggett from Texas is a ranking member on the subcommittee of health. John Larson is the Democrat from Connecticut, District 1, who is on the subcommittee on Social Security. And Bill Pasquarello, the Democrat from New Jersey, District 9, is a subcommittee member on oversight. And Mike Thompson is a ranking member subcommittee on tax. So he's the from District 4 that is on the same subcommittee that Mike Kelly chairs.
Yeah, that's right. So if you really want to target somebody, Mike Thompson in California is a good one to do this. The rest of them, these aren't, chairs or ranking members or anything, just the rest of the committee real quickly. Jody Arrington of Texas, Donald Byer of Virginia, Judy Chu, CHU of California, Suzanne Delbeni, I guess is how you pronounce that, from Washington, Ron Estes from Kansas, Dwight Evans from Pennsylvania, Randy Feenstra from Iowa, Michelle Fishbaugh from Minnesota, Brian Philpatrick from Pennsylvania, and you may do the next few of them if you wish.
Yes, Kevin Hearn from Oklahoma, Brian Higgins from New York, Daniel Kildee from Michigan, David Kustoff from Tennessee, Nicole Maliotakis from New York, Carol Miller from West Virginia, Blake Moore from Utah, and Gwen Moore from Wisconsin. And you can finish up. Well, you got a few more.
Well, the next guy's from your state. Go ahead and do him.
Okay, well, Greg Murphy, North Carolina District 3, just up the road. He's on. Jimmy Padetta is from California, District 19. And Brad Snyder is from Illinois on House Ways and Means.
Okay, and finishing it out, Terry Sewell from Alabama. She's a Democrat. Lloyd Smucker, that's Pennsylvania. Michelle Steele, California. Greg Stubbe, that's another one here from Florida. Linda Sanchez, California. Claudia Tenney from New York. Beth Van Duane from Texas. And Brad Winstrup from Ohio. Again, we just went through the entire list of the members of the Ways and Means Committee, and we will urge all of the FAIRtax volunteers that are listening to get a hold of these folks one way or another. If you're outside their district, then you'll probably either have to make a phone call or send a snail mail letter. But if you can show up in person to any of these folks and, drop by their office, that really impresses folks when people care enough to take time out of their day to come in and talk to them. I mean, anybody can fire off an email in 30 seconds. But when you're willing to actually show up at the office and say, listen, I want you to support this issue, that carries some weight.
If they're at their field office, and they sometimes will have a day, if they're not in session in Washington, they'll be in the district, and you can get in touch and make an appointment. The representatives are very accessible because they definitely want to hear from the constituents, no matter whether you voted for them or not. They still want to hear from you because they might get your vote next time. And if enough people go in, I'm going to tell you, if enough people go in and say FAIRtax, it's important, they'll remember that next time when the election cycle rolls back around to fill in their seat again. It's either going to be them, somebody else, maybe another person will put their hat in the ring that could support the FAIRtax. But it's important that you get in touch with one of the websites that's out there that has House Ways and Means committee members listed on there, and let's get to work.
Right. Let's. We got about 5 minutes left here, so let's go through the list of co-sponsors of the FAIRtax as they stand of today, which is in the middle of May. And same thing, we encourage people that, especially if you're in these districts, to get a hold of these folks, thank them for their support, and make sure that they're not just on there, just as window dressing, that they actually do support the FAIRtax bill. So Andrew Clyde from, of course, Buddy Carter, we mentioned him. He's the actual primary sponsor. He's been on, he's made some videos. He's been fairly visible recently supporting the FAIRtax. A good job for Buddy Carter. Andrew Clyde, also from Georgia. Jeff Duncan from South Carolina. Our Lady Kat Kamek here in Florida 3, which is on the other side of the county for me. Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, Bob Good from Virginia, Thomas Massey from Kentucky, Ralph Norman, South Carolina, Bill Posey, another one from Florida here, and Gary Palmer. Now, all of these, and a couple more. Let's see, Jim Banks and Barry Loudermilk. All of that group signed up to co-sponsor the first FAIRtax on the very first day it was introduced. So again, those are the folks we need to make sure that they continue with their support of the FAIRtax. They're not giving it just lip service, but they're actually going to actively support it. And you may continue with the rest of the list.
Well, I'm looking for the list. I just lost it on my screen.
Oh, you just lost? Would you like me to fill in for you? Okay. A couple more Florida folks. Gus Bilirakis from Florida 12. Matt Gates, Florida 1. Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's probably the most famous name on the list. She is a co-sponsor of the FAIRtax, was not in the last Congress, but is this time. John Rutherford from Florida, Warren Davidson from Ohio. Again, we mentioned Greg Stubbe from Florida. He was on the Ways and Means Committee. He's also a FAIRtax co-sponsor. Byron Donalds, he's out in the media a lot. Mike Collins from Georgia, Barry Moore from Alabama, Eric Burleson from Missouri, Tim Wahlberg from Mississippi, Virginia Fox, there's your friend from North Carolina District 5. How close is that to you?
He's actually my representative right now.
All right, good job. Well, be sure that you go by and thank her for her support on the FAIRtax. Andy Biggs here in Florida, Dale Strong, Alabama, and George Santos. Now, there's one guy that we really need to lean on. This is a gentleman who co-sponsored, co-sponsored the FAIRtax fairly close to the beginning of the session, but 13 days later, he withdrew his co-sponsorship. This is Blake Moore of Utah. Now, folks, we need to get a hold of Blake Moore and ask him what in the world is in your head to make you do that. Why do you love the IRS better than letting people get their entire paychecks?
Well, it all depends on how you ask the question. But if you ask the question the way you just did, it's like, hey, who's going to say I'd rather have my, taxed out the yazoo and get the money to the government before I feed my family? That's not going to be good at all. Not good.
Okay. Well, for all of the FAIRtax volunteers out there who are saying, what can I do? We have just given you a couple of fairly good-sized lists of people that you can contact in Congress and make sure that they support the FAIRtax. Explain to them that, you guys work for us. Sometimes the Congress critters don't have that kind of thinking in their head, but say, listen, this is what we need here. You guys need to vote to get rid of the IRS. Let people bring home their entire paychecks, get a tax refund every month, and get the lobbyists out of the picture.
Exactly. And it can happen, but pressure has to be placed squarely on the representatives, and especially right now that are on the House Ways and Means Committee, because that's where things are happening. That's where the next big battlefield is going to be. And I don't mean battlefield like, guns and, muskets and things like that. I mean the debate and the discussion and the conversations that we can have with our representatives. And this is the perfect example of representative government. We get to talk to our representatives. They get to go to Washington and sit down with their counterparts and say, this is what my constituents are saying. We need to do something about this.
Indeed. Okay. Well, now that you have your list of folks, the key people to contact and indicate that they should be supporting the FAIRtax, it's up to you next. Also, you can always call in your local talk shows, write letters to the editor, but contacting the members of Congress is a really good idea. And so we suggest that folks get out there and take advantage of the two lists we just gave you and get to work. All right. But until then, that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We're a slap out of time again. Thank you so much for watching and listening and sharing these videos. Until we meet again, we are the FAIRtax Guys. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
Reminding you, as we always do, that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So tell me how it works.
It's probably changed since the last time I saw it, but the short answer would be, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. Okay. Imagine bringing home everything you make. You don't get taxed for saving or accumulating wealth, and your boss doesn't get taxed more even if he pays you more.
Wow, now see, that's amazing.
And so the end result of all that is the cost of producing products and running a business goes down, so things cost less. And on top of all that, imagine every criminal, non-citizen, and under-the-table worker also paying taxes.
That's amazing.
That's the FAIRtax.